DC here. Hi, guys and gals. Well, it's a Sunday afternoon beer vlog. It's a little small bottle of a beer called Grimbergen, and it's a red wine. I should have had a glass to pour it into, but it's a little bit like a crick if ever any of you have had Belgian beers. So anyway, yeah, sometimes we laugh because when they're in the afternoon, and if the family is off actually to the pool right now, the kids are going to have some swimming lessons, and Grandpa is staying here. I don't really like the pool all that much, so Nanny and the Mama are with the kids. Anyway, so that's it. And so Grandpa is hurrying up. No, I'm not hurrying up. I'm taking a beer, but sometimes when we take our beers in the afternoon, if we're the family, it's this little small beer, and they say, the kids used to say it was my BB, which basically meant my baby bottle. So it's kind of like become the family saying, is Grandpa going to have his BB, his baby bottle. So he is. The last vlog I was walking, I talked about, scary things, I think I called it, part 1. And I believe I finished off talking about like our stuff at school, and actually the school teacher later on in life was murdered. Hopefully it had nothing to do. No, actually, from what we do know, what I do know actually is they know who was the murderer. And the worst thing was, I pulled out a picture when I was playing street hockey on our road in front of the house at the time, and my sister saw that picture, and she pointed to the young boy who was younger than us. He's probably slightly younger than my sister, and she said, "Oh my goodness, do you know who that is?" And I looked at it and I said, "I'm not quite certain, actually. I had confused it with somebody else." And she says, "That's the person that murdered Mrs. So-and-so." And I thought, oh my goodness. Just to say, you never know. You never know. And here we were playing street hockey. And when I mean street hockey, you got to see that when we were, there was what we call graders that would pass on the street or things like that. And we didn't have, the road was never really cleaned off. I mean, there was always a bit of snow or ice or whatever on it. And they would put some salt, but usually it was enough of a slippery surface that, like I say, we were able to play street hockey. So basically without skates, but with our boots, but with a puck. Sometimes we'd use a ball, depending on how bad the street was. And we made goals and everything in the street. And you see how it was? It's weird, isn't it? And if somebody was coming, we'd yell out, a car, or in French, it was in French, depending on who we were with, an auto. And we would, everybody would get out of the car, out of the street. The person would drive by, and it was like no big deal. People kind of expected this type of thing. Today, we would be either the parents would be getting a fine, or there would be a neurotic person saying, "What the heck are you doing there?" and screaming at our parents or things like that. It was just the way things were done then. I mean, there was really another way, almost another way of child care. And yeah, it was another world. It really was. And this was still, I was going to say, it's an extension of the 50s, put it that way. This is good stuff. I wouldn't drink it all the time, but every now and then, like in the afternoon, a Sunday afternoon. I usually take something like that on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon. Oh, yeah, so back to that grade school thing I was talking about, the guy who was tied on. You have to go see part 1 and you'll understand what I'm talking about. They would tie people, the teachers would tie the children down to their chairs if they really were wild. So we're talking, like the very early 60s, 1960s. And we had a teacher. So when this... I talked to you about, having the teacher's manual, that the guy had filled it with worms and squished the manual. And basically the manual was, of course, as you can imagine, between worms, and there were spiders and stuff like that. Was unusable. With all that went on, and I mean, there are other things that happen and so on. But with all that went on, fighting in class and stuff like that, the lady made a nervous breakdown. I did mention, I think the last time, that her daughter was in our class. And her daughter always called her Mrs. So-and-so. She never called her Mama. That would have probably been a problem, I suppose. Anyway, so what they did is when the lady made her nervous breakdown and ran out of the school crying, the principal came in and took the school manual and wrote, we had 2 panels of blackboards, and I think they were green actually, but you know what I mean, with chalk, and wrote on all of those panels exercises and homework and stuff like that we had to do. And we were all sent home. Now, I can only say that is not an easy thing. For example, in today's world, a lot of people work. My mom worked part-time. So my class was sent home until they found a new teacher. I don't remember how long it took, but it took at least a week, but I don't remember exactly how long it took. So then we were back in school, and a rather short, stocky man comes in, Mr. Bégin. Had a little, kind of little mustache. And that was the time, when people still wore cufflinks. So he walks in, and he says, "I am Mr. Bégin. I would like you to know that I'm your new teacher." So on. At least until Mrs. So-and-so comes back from her absence. Then what he does, he takes off his vest, takes off his cufflinks, puts them on the desk, rolls up his sleeves, and a bit like that, and he says, "I'd like you to know that I am whatever belt." It wasn't black belt. It was probably, what is the one before black belt? Anyway, something like that. In karate. So, don't think that you can try it with me. And so on. And he says, "I dare anyone." Well, we had the wild kid in school, and this is not Johnny. Johnny, the one I talked about, was not the wildest one in school. The wildest one in school, his name was Alan. And he, actually, that'd be another story, but he shared I can say it right now. We had to share lockers. I shared lockers with him. And he always had dead animals in a bag. Very often he'd have dead snakes and stuff like that. And he's the one who killed them. So he brought them, and he would bring them to scare people, and he kept them in the locker. So Alan stood up, and he was tall. Well, I guess it was probably because he had, had repeated 3 grades or something like that. So he was way older than all of us. And of course, none of us, and he was wild. He really was wild. He made Johnny look like a mild kid. And he got up and he said to the guy, he said to Mr. Bégin, "I'm not scared of you." And I still remember looking at this Mr. Bégin, who had probably been mostly a bluff, looking at this wild kid coming forward, and you could actually see fear in his eyes, because the other one, he was cracked. I mean, of course, there's other stories, but they were smoking different things, even in grade school, on the side of the school, and so on. And he came, and basically he thrashed the teacher. Well, then the principal came, because it wasn't me, but somebody ran out of the class, or the door sprung open, and everybody was hearing that there was a really bad fight going on. And, well, I can see the time moving on. Just put it that way again. This time they didn't send us home immediately, but this Alan was put in a sequestered desk in the hall where everybody could check on him. I'll get back to other stories later on, because I see we're coming up to 10 minutes. So you see, crazy stories in a crazy school, part 2. DC signing off. Take care, everybody, and have a good Sunday. Bye-bye.